Hello, welcome to Internet TCI, a monthly program where we explore the global Internet. My name is Rich Wiggins, and I'm speaking to you tonight from East Lansing, Michigan. I'd like to introduce you to my partner, Chuck Severance.
Thanks, Rich. As Rich said, my name is Charles Severance, and I'm your other host for Internet TCI. Part of the reason that we're doing this show is that my esteemed colleague, Rich, has written a book on the Internet. There are many books on the Internet. One of the hobbies that you get once you've written a book on the Internet is you go to bookstores all over the country and see if they're in there. And this book is in the bookstores, and that's pretty good. So the name of the book is Internet for Everyone, a guide for users and providers, and it's written by Rich Wiggins. But I have a chapter in the book. I wrote a chapter, and my picture's in the book. So Rich, why don't you tell us a little bit about the book?
Okay, well, first off, the arrangement that I had with Chuck was that I wouldn't have to pay him anything for the chapter that he contributed if I included a picture of him in the book. And appealing to vanity was successful in this case. I haven't paid him a nickel, and he reminds me of that almost daily.
So what's the other picture in the book?
There's lots of pictures in the book.
No, of a person.
Bill Clinton's in the book.
There you go. Me and Bill Clinton's in
You, Bill Clinton, and a gorilla. I don't know if there's any connection among all of these.
So tell us what it's like to write a book.
Well, your first book is the toughest. You find that you spend a lot more time on it worrying about every paragraph than perhaps you should. And by the time all is said and done, you finish about a year later than you thought you would.
So how many other Internet books are there out there?
We're not keeping count.
Oh, okay.
You know, Satchel Paige, don't look back.
So what we want to talk about now a little bit is why we're doing this show. What are some of the goals for the show? Hey, Rich, why don't you go ahead first and tell us what some of you think of the goals of the show are?
Well, first off, we want to have some fun. We're not going to make this into a real formal kind of a thing. Secondly, we've got a little bit of time devoted to this project. We're going to have 1 hour every month where we can go through and surf the net, show people what's new, what's cool, show people how to do things. So we're going to devote this show to the Internet, explaining what's out there and how to find things and how to surf, how to get connected, and topics like that.
Yeah, I sort of view the audience for this show as a broad sort of novice audience that's just beginning to hear about the Internet and wants to know more, as well as sort of a more connected and technical audience that sort of wants to know the details. So some of our segments are going to have sort of novice segments, and some of them are going to be very technical segments. Both Rich and I work technically with the Internet every day. In my work, I use the Internet to publish, to access information every single day. And Rich, tell us about your job in the Internet.
Well, I've got a couple of jobs at Michigan State. One of these is taking care of some legacy systems, some people call them, some old mainframes. I have a staff of people working on those sorts of projects. But then the area that's related to the Internet is taking care of our campus-wide information system, which is a fancy way of saying we tell people about Michigan State using Internet tools like Gopher and the World Wide Web.
Good. So how long has the book been out?
Book came out in August of '94.
This is like the Jay Leno show, you know, where you got to plug the book.
Well, thanks, Jay.
Yeah, right. Has the book been reviewed anywhere? Does anybody like this book other than you and me?
The book has been reviewed by some national magazines. As it happens, in the month of February, I managed to get reviewed by 3 different magazines all at once. One of those was Internet World. We had a favorable review, and if I look here, I see your name is here in the review, Charles Severance.
Is it in the big bold letters?
Well, it's kind of buried in the middle here, but
okay.
It says you contributed a chapter, so they noticed it. They spelled your name 2 different ways, but...
Did they get it right once?
They got it right once.
Ah, okay.
So that's good.
That's good.
I also managed to find a review of the book in a magazine called the Wilson Library Bulletin. And this is reviewed next to things like the concise Columbia Encyclopedia and Webster's New World Encyclopedia. So
Does that mean that your book is boring?
No, it's a useful reference.
Oh, okay. Just checking.
Boring. My goodness.
Where else?
Finally, in the month of February, somehow this book got reviewed in Penthouse Magazine, if you can believe that.
Did they mention me in Penthouse Magazine?
They did, but that's a different subject. We'll talk about it. Wasn't in the book review, no. They wanted to announce their presence on the net, and so they wanted to tell their readers what books to go read in order to find out about the net. And they called my book one of the top 5 books about the Internet, and they said, this was kind of cute, they said, this may not be the first book you'll want to read, but it might be the second book you'll want to read. So there you have it.
That's good compliments.
Well, enough about the book.
Enough about the book.
Enough shameless promotion of the book.
Yeah, well, we even have named a segment on the show after the book. The first segment of the show is called The Internet for Everyone, and that's sort of the part of the show that we aim at the novice users and sort of give people broad overviews of the Internet, same as the book. Some of the other topics, some of the other parts of the show that we're going to cover is one of my personal favorites called Chuck and Rich on the Road. And what we do there is we take our camcorders as we travel. We go around and we speak and we give presentations and do other travel, and we just run around with our camcorders and take tapes of network things and bring it back here on the show. Tech Talk is another one of my favorites. That's where we're going to talk about a little more detail about the net. And Net News is another one of our topics where we're going to talk about both sort of news related to the net as well as sort of the net in the news. So you see something, we'll show you a bunch of things that we find funny or interesting or useful in the network. So Rich, why don't you tell us about the rest of our topics that we're going to cover in these shows?
Okay. Well, in most episodes of our show, we're going to have an internet interview of one sort or another. And that might be a little bit more formal type interview compared to the Chuck and Rich on the Road segment. Why is it Chuck and Rich on the Road instead of Rich and Chuck on the Road?
Well, there's a good answer to that.
Yeah?
We flipped a coin, and I won. That's why.
I thought it had to do with the alphabet. Or...
No, we flipped a coin and I won.
Oh, okay. We'll have a net surfing segment, and there we'll take people on a tour of the net. We'll show you what's new and what's cool out on parts of the net, such as Gopher and the World Wide Web. And then we're going to have a little segment where we'll have prizes each month for both the best question that's been submitted to us and the best information about a new site somewhere on the internet.
Okay, well, I think that's a good introduction to our show. I keep saying the word internet, it pops up all the time. A good introduction to our show, Rich. Anything you want to add before we just go ahead to our first segment, the Internet for Everyone?
Let's get rolling.
Okay, sounds good. Hello, welcome to our segment, Internet for Everyone. In this part of the show, we're going to give a broad overview of how people use the net and how that use of the net has changed. To give sort of the broad overview, people use the net for three main things. They use the net to communicate, they use the net to gather information, and they use the net to publish or provide information about themselves. And Rich and I are going to take you through a sort of a tour, a cook's tour of how people use the internet. And so, Rich, go ahead.
First off, as Chuck said, we have these sort of three broad categories of uses of the net. Under the category of communications is sort of the first application that people have exposure to, and that's electronic mail. The first time somebody tends to do something on the internet, it's probably sending or receiving an email message. There are other areas in that category of communications flowing from the idea of one-to-one or one-to-a-few electronic mail. We have the concept of mailing lists, where you can sit and use your familiar mailbox environment, but you can carry on a discussion about photography or aviation or art or politics or what have you. There's another category under communications, another kind of activity that's referred to as Usenet. Usenet is a similar concept to electronic mail and mailing lists, but the way it's implemented is quite differently. And in other episodes of Internet TCI, we'll go into some of the basics of plugging into Usenet. There's also some interesting areas where people are getting into real-time communication on the net, from simple textual things like the Unix Talk facility to a sort of a citizens band radio called Internet Relay Chat, and there's even a video phone for the internet called See You See Me from Cornell University. And in future episodes of the show, we'll be sure and talk about those kinds of activities. Now, under the category of navigating and retrieving or gathering information, there are also a number of different tools and techniques that people use. There's some old, sort of venerable ways that folks go and find things on the net. There's a simple tool called Telnet, which was originally a way you could log into a computer somewhere else on the internet, but was also often used as a way that you could find information at particular locations on the net. There's also a tool called FTP, or the File Transfer Protocol, which is a way to go get documents or pieces of software, to go get files that are out there on the net. There are more recent tools that have gotten a lot more attention, such as Gopher, and more recently the World Wide Web. And in tonight's episode and in a lot of our episodes, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the World Wide Web.
I would say that often people get the World Wide Web and the Internet confused. The Internet is sort of a communication tool. It's a way to communicate between people, and the World Wide Web is sort of the information that you're gathering. And so sometimes people get those two things confused.
Yeah, that's true. The fellow who invented the World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee, came up with an analogy. I don't know if it helps or not. He says the Internet is the wires, it's the nervous system, and the World Wide Web is the brain. Right. I don't know if that... Right. Does that work for you?
But the Internet is certainly the wires.
Yeah, that part's right.
Right.
Okay. There's another tool for finding information called WAIS, Wide Area Information Servers. And WAIS is something that's gotten a fair amount of press. It's talked about quite a bit. But it turns out in practice, human users aren't making a whole lot of use of this tool. And that's something we want to explore in future episodes as well. Now, if folks are going out and gathering information, if folks are navigating and retrieving information on the net, well, somebody has to be providing information as well. And that's a big growth area these days. Once again, in particular, the World Wide Web is a big part of that growth. Everybody wants to figure out how to get a home page on the World Wide Web. And we'll make clear tonight what the World Wide Web looks like and what the heck a home page is as we explore around.
You know, I think that this last part about providing the information is sort of the key thing that makes the Internet different from a lot of other forms of communication. If you think of cable TV, telephone, and other forms of communication, this providing information part of the Internet and the World Wide Web makes it so that you're sort of always producing your own TV show. You mentioned the word homepage. I sort of view it as, with your homepage, as a person, you tend to write your own autobiography continuously. It's sort of a continuous autobiography about yourself. So I think this is the thing that's capturing people's attention, is this providing information aspect of the Internet and the World Wide Web.
Well, actually, Chuck, as you know, I spend a lot of time going around the country giving lectures about the Internet and about the World Wide Web. And I have to tell you, you're one of my examples, because...
Is that a good example or a bad example?
Well, we'll leave that for the observer.
Okay.
You're one of the first people that I know of that really glommed onto this idea of, I want to tell my own personal story.
That's true. That's
on
true.
the World Wide Web. So your homepage, not only, as you know, has a picture of you and your wife and kids, and I believe there's a picture of the dog as well.
Nope, not yet. Not yet.
The dog is
just
not
got a
on the
rat.
homepage.
I have to put a picture of the rat up.
But maybe a little bit more seriously, you've also got links to every scholarly paper you've ever written, so far as I know.
Right. What I do is I write papers on the web first, and I use that as a review mechanism. So people can review my papers over the web and give me a lot of feedback instead of trying to get it on paper. So I think this is really important. We'll try to explore this, I think, as we go.
We'll talk more about personal publishing on the World Wide Web.
Yep.
Okay? For those of us who have been tracking the Internet for quite a while and paying attention to the development of the World Wide Web, even when we saw NCSA Mosaic in March and April of 1993, the tool that in a way made all of this possible, a lot of us would not have predicted how fast and how far we'd come. For instance, CBS has a home page on the World Wide Web. They have a presence on the World Wide Web. And using a tool that allows you to browse the World Wide Web, something like Mosaic or Netscape or any of a number of browsers, folks can point and click and pull up things like who's going to be on The Late Show with David Letterman, or last night's top 10 list, information about sports programming, and what have you. CBS was so proud of this that they even flashed the address for their home page on the bottom of the screen when they were promoting their NCAA tournament coverage this year. And again, just a couple of years ago, I never would have thought that a major television network would have been bragging about their presence on the Internet and on the World Wide Web so soon.
It's hard to open up USA Today without finding a World Wide Web address inside of it. That's very exciting.
In some ways it's scary, because sometimes I try to tune out of the Internet. And I was at a blues bar in Chicago last month and sitting there listening to some great blues in a dark, smoky bar. A guy walks by with a t-shirt on. And on the back of the t-shirt is a URL, or Uniform Resource Locator, which is an address for his homepage on the World Wide Web. So you can't get away from this stuff, no matter how hard you try. In general, the trend that we're seeing is we're moving from older, more cumbersome text mode, manual ways of doing things on the Internet to a point-and-click kind of an environment. And if you think about it, in the world of computing, we've made that sort of a transition from a text mode kind of an interface when folks were sitting and using MS-DOS and typing CD and dir and so forth a lot, to Windows. So it's the same sort of a transition. People want a point-and-click interface for their operating system. And in the last couple of years, people have really tuned into Windows, those folks that are using Intel boxes, as their way of using the computer. Now, your friendly Macintosh user will tell you, hey, we had graphical interfaces 10 years ago, and you folks are just catching up with us. But in both environments, or in Unix or whatever environment, people want a point and click. They don't want to type a lot of commands and read a lot of garbage on the screen. So today, delivering information on the internet is a lot different than it was in 1991. If we had some documents that we wanted to publish, if we wanted to put your master's thesis up on the internet in 1991, we would have used something called anonymous FTP. If in 1992 or 93 we wanted to put your master's thesis on the net, we would have used the internet Gopher. Now, today, I think we would pick the World Wide Web, as you've chosen to do. And I want to give you an example that shows the transition between these three tools. This is a real example from the Library of Congress. The folks at the Library of Congress put up a collection from their archive of Vatican documents. And when they put this collection up, they expected you to type commands like ftp space ftp.loc.gov, which is a way to connect to the server. Then you sort of have to log into the server. After you've done that, you see a lot of extra junk on the screen. You see things that are in fact Unix file permissions and stuff like that. And the titles of your documents are actually going to be boring little file names like bibliog.txt. Not a real friendly way to go about your business. When you see a file that might be interesting through one of these cryptic titles, you have to manually go and fetch the thing, and then you have to manually start up some sort of a program to look at the file.
And it might be in the wrong format, right? I mean, you don't know.
It might be in a format that you don't even know how to deal with.
Right.
So, not a real friendly way to deliver information.
But a lot of us folks got pretty good at it.
Oh yeah.
People use it every day.
It was and is an important way to deliver information on the internet. And in fact, FTP is still way ahead of the World Wide Web in terms of traffic that it accounts for. At least it was last time I checked. Well, this is a real example. As it happens, back in '93 when this collection went up, a Gopher person at the University of Virginia, who was also a librarian, said, you know, anonymous FTP is not the best way to deliver this information. So he went and Gopherized the same collection of documents. Now, users who have a Gopher program installed on their workstation can point and click at titles. And the titles look a lot friendlier. They're English text. You can read the titles. We also have a way with the Internet Gopher that folks can have text-type documents as depicted by this icon, or they can have graphical documents. You click on one and you're reading about the image of Rome. You click on the other and you're looking at a picture of the image of Rome. There are a lot of folks that have a misconception. They think that Gopher is not a multimedia system. It really is a multimedia system. It's not as fancy as the World Wide Web, but it can do some pretty cool stuff. Gopher is described as a hierarchical menu system. And here we're looking at a very good Gopher server that's at the University of Michigan. Even though we both work at Michigan State, every once in a while, is it okay if I pull up an example from that small school down the road from us?
You're welcome to do that, boss.
Okay, all right. So here we're looking in one folder on the M-Link Gopher at the University of Michigan. We're reading about education. Within the education folder, we have a bunch of titles. And now finally we're in a document, a useful document for educators. This thing's called EduPage. And they give up-to-date summaries of what's going on in educational technology. But look at the distinction here. You're either looking at a folder, depicted by this icon, or you're looking at a document. Basic distinction that people have when they're dealing with the Internet Gopher.
When I first saw Gopher, it really, this was the first thing that made the Internet at all useful to me. I mean, I saw this, and there are many, many people that came on the net at this point. A lot of educators came on the net, a lot of high school and K through 12 people came on the net, and they're still very, very heavy users of Gopher, and there's a lot of people that just love Gopher to death.
Absolutely. Even though Gopher isn't the richest way to deliver information, there's a lot of stuff that's out there and will stay on Gopher for quite a while. Now, we frequently have these arguments about when will the World Wide Web eat Gopher for lunch. And my friends at the University of Minnesota, I don't know if you're tuning in or not, but I think it'll be a while. I don't know whether it'll be 2 years or 5 years. And the folks at Minnesota have some tricks up their sleeve. They're working on a 3D Gopher interface, so it's sort of a virtual reality way of going through the net. We'll see what happens with those developments in later episodes. But let's get back to the story and let's talk about the World Wide Web. As it happens, another enterprising internet information provider, in this case somebody in the Netherlands by the name of Frans van Hossel, took a look at the FTP and Gopher versions of the Library of Congress archive and said, you know, we can do better than that. And he went and built a World Wide Web version of the Vatican exhibit. Now we have headlines that look different than the rest of our text. And perhaps most importantly to a lot of people, we have images that are adjacent to text. So we don't have this distinction where you're either reading a text file or looking at an image. So it looks a lot more like a magazine article or what you might see on a CD-ROM. And as we'll see in particular when we do some surfing, the World Wide Web is a hypertext system. That means that every document can be a window into other documents. So you can point and click and find your way around the net quite easily.
Right. When I first saw this, it occurs to me that there is a whole new generation of people that are already trained on this and they don't even know it. In schools, they have computers, and they're used to hypertext and all that kind of media already, and they understand the idea of clicking on things and making stuff happen. And the World Wide Web takes that same interface that these people are already getting used to, and it simply extends it across the network. So now all of a sudden we have sort of an interface that a 2-year-old can play with, and we now have the internet is available at that level.
That's an interesting point. I was at a book signing recently and somebody came up to me after the signing and said, why is it everybody in this room is over 40 years old? And I said, well, first off, I'm not quite 40 myself, but and it turned out he was right. I looked around, I hadn't realized it. For kids to learn about Mosaic, Netscape, and the World Wide Web is no big deal. Right. They're used to CD-ROMs. They expect a point-and-click graphical interface to information.
Right.
For those of us who have suffered through punch cards and paper tapes and finally to 110 baud Model 33 teletypes, now we enter an era where we're moving into something that's really slick and we're all excited about it.
We appreciate that.
And we appreciate it. Those young whippersnappers, they just...
Darn right. Kids these days, you know?
Kids these days, I tell you what. Let's look at some examples of some of the cool things that are out there on the World Wide Web. And first we'll show you these examples as we've captured them on the computer. And then later on in the show we'll do some surfing. One of my favorite examples is the Encyclopedia Britannica. The Britannica folks said a couple of years ago, we need to have a way to put the Britannica online. And they said, you know, we can't fit the Britannica on a single CD. A single CD only holds about 680 megabytes of information. I say only, but the Britannica with all of its text and graphics is a heck of a lot more data than that. And they figured customers didn't want to deal with a dozen CDs and swapping them back and forth. So the Britannica folks make the full text and graphics of the Britannica available on a campus licensing basis, and the delivery mechanism is the World Wide Web. So a big university or a public school or a library can say, we'll pay you a fee and we'll have complete access to the Britannica. It'll be available online for all of our users, all of the members of our community. And it's catching on. It's going to be an important way of delivering information. We'll talk more about the Britannica example in other episodes. Here's an example of a simple kind of search that you can do with the Britannica. You can either do a natural language search, like when was the Elizabethan age, or you can do what are called Boolean searches. And here, once again, we're using the World Wide Web. In this case, we're using Mosaic, and we're filling in information on a form. So it's becoming sort of a standard interface into information that's out there, and Lord knows what medium in a machine room somewhere. Okay? A big growth area on the net these days is advertising on the net. And here's an example of the first restaurant on the World Wide Web, at least to my knowledge. In fact, last December I happened to have dinner at this restaurant. A friend said, I want to take you to a neat southwestern place in Washington, and they do have very good food, by the way. I was so excited about it, I said to the woman who was seating us, hey, this is really cool. This is the first restaurant on the World Wide Web. And the woman looked at me like I was from Mars. Obviously, the staff had not been briefed on this vital information that they're out there on the World Wide Web.
I think that advertising is an important aspect, and we're going to touch on that some more.
We'll be talking a lot about advertising.
We got to talk at some point in this show or the next show. We will be talking about the funding of the net. Who's paying for all this stuff? And that funding is part of the big sociological impact of the net, and how that's changing is going to be very important.
Yep. Now, if you can advertise something on the net, you also want to be able to sell it on the net. And a lot of companies are getting into product catalogs, not only where you can go and find out what's available, you can also go and order over the net. And that'll be another topic we'll want to discuss in detail later on.
I was talking to a fella who has a company that sells some kind of a widget out of Chicago, and his company's put their entire catalog up on the net. and maybe it fits on one CD-ROM, but if you're out somewhere, you got to get that CD-ROM. With the internet, he can have a customer say, here's my internet access point, and click, they're looking at their connection. And so you don't ever have to ship a CD-ROM. So I think that this is really exciting, and the people putting this stuff up find it as a tremendous benefit to them as well.
This is an example from the Internet Shopping Network, and if you're not sure whether this is something real or not, you might think about the fact that the Home Shopping channel bought these people, and they're one company now. I've learned that they have not yet merged their catalog, though, and if you want to buy cubic zirconia, you're still going to have to tune into the Home Shopping channel and call them up on the telephone.
So where's the Tootie icon at? Is no Tootie yet?
Soon to be implemented.
I don't even know what Tootie is.
I don't even know what you're talking about, but that's often the case, so we'll just roll right along. The IBM Corporation used to send you a tree a year worth of information, and I used to be on their mailing list. Now they say, hey, if you want to find out about that cool new ThinkPad, the butterfly with the expanding keyboard thing that's available, come visit us on the World Wide Web. We're not going to mail you a lot of paper anymore. So you could even argue that the Internet and the World Wide Web are green. They're ecologically correct, right? We're saving trees.
There you go.
It's good stuff. Now, Digital Equipment Corporation also has a presence on the web. There are some folks who are students of web page design who are a little bit nasty, a little bit snippy about this. They describe this page as being an example of design from the hostage note school.
Where you cut the
letters out because they have so many font changes. But it's still a nice little interface. It's
and you can click on any of those things, right?
Click on any one of these things.
NASA gets a boost from Alpha Systems. I got one of those on my desk.
There you go. You got an Alpha on your desk.
Yes, I do.
Not a NASA. Okay.
I got a NASA on my desk too.
Federal Express has their entire tracking database on the World Wide Web. Type in an air bill number and you find out where the heck that package is. So that's an example.
This is my favorite personal page. My personal favorite page.
It's not your favorite personal page?
Yeah.
Okay. There's even a telescope in the United Kingdom where you can go and submit orders. You say, I want you to look at this portion of the sky. You submit the order over the World Wide Web and you get the pictures back of what it found when it looked at that part of the sky.
Cool.
Real-time interfaces on the internet. Music is out there on the net. A fellow named Adam Curry, who was at MTV for a while, now has his own company, and he's making deals with artists and with companies to deliver samples of music straight over the net, and the World Wide Web is his preferred interface. Virtual libraries are a hot topic and something we'll want to talk about in detail. I hate to say it, this is also from the University of Michigan, one more example.
They do good work.
And they do good things down there, and they're heavy into the virtual library game, also over the World Wide Web. And finally, someday we're going to have an internet license plate page on the World Wide Web. We don't have that yet. We'll close with a picture of my license plate.
There you go.
Our next segment is Chuck and Rich on the road. I like to think of it as Rich and Chuck on the road, but we'll call it whatever Chuck wants us to. Chuck and I do spend a lot of time going off to various conferences and various speaking engagements, and we are going to try to carry a camera along with us and find out interesting things from folks who are helping make the internet happen, putting new tools on the net and so forth. As it happens this month, I gave a book signing in Dayton, Ohio, and I found out when I was down there that at the end of the month, another author, a fellow by the name of Cliff Stoll, was also going to do a book signing. And what was neat about this was my book, of course, is very in favor of the internet and electronic libraries and information on the net and so forth. Cliff has a much more ambivalent and even negative attitude about all of this. And he's saying we ought to unplug our connections to networks. So I peppered the audience there with questions to throw back at Cliff when he got down there. And I left a copy of my book for him, and lo and behold, he sent me back a copy of his book, Silicon Snake Oil, and he even sent me, since I had bought his book and left mine, he even sent me a $20 bill. He not only autographed the book, he says, "Gadzooks, Rich, here's a book that pulls in the opposite direction." He even agreed that he's willing to debate me, which is something I want to do pretty soon, and he even autographed the $20 bill.
And what good is that? I mean, now you got to keep the $20 bill.
I know. I don't know what.
You should autograph something else.
And we'll have to figure that out.
So what's this book about a little bit?
The thesis of the book is that we're wasting too much money on computer technology and libraries and on things like the internet, and books are where it's at. And we don't want to get into that debate tonight. I'll just say very briefly, I don't know anybody who thinks books are going away anytime soon.
True.
We'll talk about that sort of stuff later on. So I unfortunately don't have any of the animated Mr. Stoll on tape, but you had an adventure on the road recently.
Yep. Last week I was in Southern California attending a computer standards meeting, and I dialed up from my room looking for an interesting place to go. I thought I'd find like a restaurant or a surf shop or something that was on the internet, and I was scrounging through over my modem connection, and I came across a coffee shop in San Diego. And this coffee shop has an internet connection. So I went and visited them for a while and took some video, enjoyed myself, and here I am sitting at the Cafe Renaissance with my report. Hello, Rich. This is Chuck. I'm coming to you from the only coffee shop in San Diego that has an internet connection. I just got done checking my email back in East Lansing. Putting the coffee shop on the internet was the idea of one of the owners, Mike Lebienne.
I've always leaned more toward the just practicality and side of it in terms of I just want to be able to access things that I want, be able to show people that are intimidated about computers the easiest way to access what they want, how to do searches. So I'm not the best person to talk to about how the internet got started, the history about it, or some of the technical things about it, the communication protocols and stuff like that. I'm just strictly for showing the average Joe how to maximize their use of the internet.
And selling them some Joe as well, right?
Right. Selling some Joe to the average Joe. So mainly it was never an idea to bring in a lot of money. The idea was just to make it, I was interested in the internet. I thought other people would be too, and it would be good for the community to have this terminal here. Most people, I'd say, are using it for getting on the web. I teach a free internet class on Saturdays. It's an hour-long class, and a lot of people have come in, and after taking that class, they feel comfortable with being able to just come in here and get on the web. Some people just come and check their email, and then the rest are, I've got law students that come down here and access Westlaw and Lexis, which are some law databases that I have the software for accessing the databases, and the students, they get free accounts, temporary accounts.
While I was at the Cafe Renaissance, a number of customers stopped by to get some coffee and chat about anything from sending email to help getting connected to the internet. Some even call Mike on the phone.
Oh, I'd help you with that. That's an unusual request. I'll be here till 7. Okay, bye. He called up and he wanted to send some email to his daughter, which is on a boat in the Pacific called the National Oceanographic something or other. Some ship that I guess probably through their own communications can download email at the boat, and he wants to send email to her, and he doesn't have an email account, so he was hoping he could come in here and do it. And so typically I don't let people send email from here on my account because it's as if it's coming from me. But this is an unusual request, and I think it's...
Is he a regular customer?
I don't know.
I think this is interesting. And internet, from what I kind of gather from half listening to that, is that it's a way for people to communicate with each other by computers literally around the world, isn't it?
Yep.
That's pretty good.
It's easy to surf. Getting started, getting set up takes a little bit of trick.
Yeah. So I bought a new 2800 high-ease modem, and I didn't really understand how to use this thing yet.
So you come in here for some latte and some consulting?
Yeah, a little bit of latte and consult. Trying to figure out something to get me up and get me moving, you know what I mean?
Social impact?
Yeah.
Like, what do I think? What kind of social impact do I think it's...
Yeah, you think it's good or bad? You think it's going to change things?
Well, I think it's just going to be... it's going to be a reflection of what's going on. An honest reflection of what's going on in society. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think I said that.
Yeah.
This is what I envision as far as the future of the cyber cafe scenario. You walk into a coffee house, and there's big monitors on the walls, maybe 4 or 5 of them. And each one is a different video site, or maybe they're changing every 5 or 10 minutes, going to different reflector video sites around the world, so that at any moment you can look up and you can see what's going on at a coffee house in Paris, Madrid, maybe what's going on at a business in Egypt, what's going on at an airport in Singapore, whatever, wherever they've got video transmission over the internet. And maybe you just have, you've got a technical person, technical staff always there helping people out. You've got something that's controlling that, so you're switching sites all the time. So you're seeing different parts of the world simultaneously while you're drinking your coffee and maybe talking to somebody over IRC.
I took off for dinner, but I came back later in the evening to have a coffee and chat with some of the other customers. And I got to do some surfing myself. So Mike never tries any of this fancy weird stuff over on this side. He's kind of a more purist. What's your favorite on this side of the weird things? Like the Coke stuff and the whatever stuff. I mean, what's your favorite? I mean, you know, the cherry bomb, for example, is that good?
I say I like the White Russian. That's just me.
But,
That would be really cool.
I was here this afternoon, and it's so funny. I mean, people come in to talk to Mike, and they like, one guy brought his manual for his modem in. He's like, what's this all about? It's just so funny.
Got some good footage.
Oh yes, yes. Mike is really articulate fellow. You just ask him a little question and go off for long periods of
Right, and
time.
that's exactly what you want.
Yep, that's exactly.
Yes.
So, do you use this much?
No, actually never. I should just bring a book in and read.
Exams are your exams coming up? That'll be next week or so. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. So our exams are next week. Well, Thursday, my class, I'm giving a final on Thursday. I come back to Michigan and the final. I took off the last week of class. John Liskey, I got a mail from my producer here. I got mail from the producer of the TV show. Hi guys, sorry for the short notice. Meet again. I got a meeting on Monday, right when I get back to Michigan, about the TV show. On my phone, I got mail from John Liskey, our executive producer, sitting here out here in California.
The alien, you know?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Okay, thanks a lot for all your time. Sorry to annoy you and all your customers so badly. See, Mike. And so ends the first Chuck and Rich on the Road from Cafe Renaissance in San Diego, California. Well, I tell you, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. You know, you can't escape your producer. No matter where you're at, you can't escape your producer. The thing that I really enjoyed is I'm just sitting in this cafe, and anytime I wanted to, I could sort of connect with all the people I care about, do anything I wanted. It was a great feeling. I mean, when I got back, I wanted to put those into every cafe that I go to now here back in Michigan. So that's a lot of fun. What'd you think of it?
I thought it was great. If we're going to do a lot of discussion of surfing on the net, I think the first piece being from California is very apropos. I do have to say that when the first pizza company allowed ordering over the World Wide Web, Greg Kinnear, the comedian, said, you know, maybe they'll figure out how to use the telephone someday. So you could also get in touch with Mr. Liskey other ways. We want to advocate the internet, and we will, but we won't push it to the exclusion of other media. And it was fine that woman came in and said, I'd rather read a book. That's okay. But
Right.
you'd rather surf the net, and that's okay too.
Oh, well, thanks. Well, that's sort of the end of our first Rich and Chuck on the Road, and we think we're going to have a good time with this, and we hope you have a good time too. Today's internet interview was with Bill Haw of Digital Equipment Corporation. Carlton Thomas caught up with Bill at the Convergence 95 conference in Chicago. Carlton asked Bill about the future of the internet and the future of the national information infrastructure.
We're talking today with Bill Haw, Technical Director of Network Products for Digital Equipment Corporation. Thanks for joining us, Bill. What do you think of the national information infrastructure effort, and in what ways is it similar, and what ways is it different from today's internet?
The national information infrastructure is a many-pronged initiative which is basically recognized that the future is in information technology and so forth. In fact, if we look at the size of that industry segment, that's the largest single segment today in our country. And so that initiative is aimed at fostering growth and investment in a variety of technologies and businesses. The internet is, you can think of as a prototype for that, or as an example of that. But as I mentioned before, a lot of different technologies will be used by this structure. We could call it all the internet, or we could call it a hybrid system. The Information Infrastructure Initiative is aimed at fostering the growth of that technology.
What has been the biggest technical challenge in getting the internet into people's homes using cable TV technology?
It's a variety of technical challenges, and some of them are, there's also some personal and sociological challenges. Some of it has to do with the cable plants, the nature of the cable plants, which were designed for one-way broadcast systems, so how much of the cable plant is done for two-way, that's part of it. Another has to do with the model. That is, if I'm working from home, what I want is seamless access to my business. So there's a technical problem of how do I actually get that connection into the business. If I were using the telephone network, I'd make a long-distance phone call, but maybe this is an alternative. So that security problem of how I can get in through the cable network, maintain the security of my corporate data, and then get in through a firewall. That's, in some sense, as big a problem as the transmission on the network. In fact, in the internet community, perhaps one of the hottest topics today is security.
How do you see the internet evolving over the next 10 years?
10 years is probably hard. Anybody who says they know the 10-year answer is probably kidding you, because as I mentioned, the technology change, that will fuel things a lot. And so with that tremendous change in technology, it's hard to actually predict which path it's going to go down. There are some things that are fairly clear, though. The expansion of the network itself will seem to continue unabated. The way the network is constructed will probably change with time. It'll adopt new technologies like ATM, cable television, telephony. All of those will become part of the network. There will be services which are called the internet, but might not be the university-based internet that you referred to before. It might be a private network that uses all the internet technologies and has a seamless gateway to the public internet. So the idea will be there will be a blurring of the divisions between the private and the public network with the appropriate security firewalls, and all of that structure will probably for always be called the network or something, even though the basic structure of it will be different from the way it's done today.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Carlton Thomas with TCI at Chicago's Hotel Intercontinental for Convergence 95. Back to you, Rich and Charles.
Thank you, Carlton. That was an excellent report. The National Information Infrastructure is going to be something that we're going to talk on. As Bill said, there's going to be a transition. This internet is just the beginning. There's going to be all kinds of network services, and the National Information Infrastructure are the words that we all use to sort of talk about the follow-on, and it's going to be quite a dramatic improvement and change in what we call the internet today. The next segment that we're going to do is the segment that we're sort of going to end each of the shows with, and it's called Network Surfing, where Rich and I are just going to sort of cruise the net and talk about it. So, next segment, Network Surfing. This segment is Surfing the Net. Rich and I are going to actually connect to the internet and download information and show you as we do it. Before we start surfing, I want to talk a little bit about the technology that we're using. This technology that we're using is high-speed data communication using cable TV. The actual bits you're going to see moving back and forth are coming across a cable TV channel. There's a pilot project going on here in East Lansing to test the feasibility of moving high-speed data across cable TV networks. And we're part of that, and we're actually moving this data across the cable TV.
We should probably point out that we're using a cable modem that's provided by Digital Equipment Corporation called a ChannelWorks box, and it's part of this trial here in East Lansing. The speeds that we get by using the ChannelWorks are as fast as you would find in a university environment or in a research lab, many times faster than what you'd have over a conventional modem.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and start surfing. The first page that we're on, we're using a program called Netscape. And Netscape is a browser, and we talked a little bit about this at the beginning. And what you can do is click on things that are highlighted. And then, so we'll go down here and take a look. This is sort of our page for the television show, and you can see our little TCI logo. And welcome to the show. Here's your host, Rich Wiggins. He's the author of a book. Did we tell you that he's the author of a book?
Now, we should point out the Cowbird's son has no shoes here. You don't have any kind of a link to me.
Right. This is hypertext environment. The things that have color are things that you can actually jump to. So if I wanted to click on this Charles Severance, we'd actually go to a different page. So I'll click on Charles Severance here, and we'll go see my home page. And that's my home page. And there I am sitting in my office in all the places I live.
What the heck are all those logos, Chuck?
Well, Michigan State University, Unix Computing Group, Michigan State Computer Science Department, IEEE Computer Center, and that's the mascot of our football team at Michigan State University.
Okay. Why don't you have the brand shoes you wear for?
Well, that's it. Home pages are very detailed and personal things. So we've selected a couple things for you to take a look at, and I'll sort of be going through here, and Rich is going to sort of tell us how this stuff works.
Well, now in a later episode, we're going to revisit Chuck's homepage and look at the kind of stuff that's really out there, and there is some good stuff on his page. But for now, let's go and let's look at what ESPN, the cable sports network, has on the World Wide Web. Here we see their example of a home page, and we keep using that word. The home page is simply the first page in any collection of information out on the World Wide Web.
So we can take a look at Parcells, Wakes. So now we're effectively reading a newspaper article at this point. One thing that interests me about this ESPN page is when I'm interested in one particular football score, I watch television, if I blink at the wrong minute, I don't see it. With this kind of mechanism, I can go find the score that I'm interested in.
Yep. Information on demand, we call it.
So
okay, now let's go look at the Star Trek page.
You know, it's funny. I don't watch as much Star Trek as a good computer person should watch. So I don't even know the name of the next Star Trek. So again, I'm going to click when I see something that's highlight, and that's going to go to the next page.
And we have a couple of characters that they tell us about from the new Star Trek show, the Voyager show. And this is the holographic doctor. Any fans of the show will recognize him. And they have all kinds of information, including if we hunt around, we'll be able to find audio information and probably maps of the ship and all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
Oh, John Delancey is on Legend. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
See? You ought to get an internet connection.
You learn
don't
something
know what
every
you're
day.
going to learn. So, okay, well, let's go on back again, take a look at the next one. Now, what I'm doing in this situation is I'm clicking in the upper left-hand corner on this little arrow that says go backwards. And so it's sort of like you descend into the page, and then you sort of come back up out of the page. And so I keep working my way down into the internet, and then I sort of work my way back up and up and up and up.
Oops.
Oops, went too far. Went all the way up to our TCI homepage, our TV show homepage, and now I'm going to go back down again. And where are we going to go next? Kathy Daliberti.
Okay.
Tell us about this one.
Now, this is one of the two wives of the gentlemen that are imprisoned in Iraq now. And this particular person says, well, you know, the World Wide Web is a good way for me to tell my story and perhaps elicit some more support for my position. And we have the familiar yellow ribbon as an icon that she's chosen.
Yeah. So this is just an example of getting some information out to the rest of the world. Let's go back up and take a look. Okay, let's cruise down a little bit.
Now, Chuck's using the scroll bar to scroll down this page, so the page actually is bigger than what will fit on our screen all at once. Notice as the images are filling in here that we see a little bit of the image and then we see more and more detail. That's one of the ways that Netscape allows you to make very efficient use of perhaps some slower links. And if you were dialed in over a modem, you'd at least get some feedback. You'd get some sense that something was going on as it slowly fills in those images.
Right. At home, I have to use a modem to connect to the internet. And it's very nice to see that feedback, because when we're connected at 10 megabits, the way we are going over the cable television, it seems to come very quickly in half a second or so. But some of the larger pictures take 20 or 30 seconds, and it's sort of nice to see that it's still coming and coming and coming. So here what we have is some stuff from Disney, and this is called the press room, and we can take a look at some upcoming pictures, and this is a lot of fun. Here's a Judge Dredd, and we can take a look at a picture of Judge Dredd, and again, now you'll see very distinctly the downloading time. And those of you who have modems, you'll be sort of jealous of this 10 megabit speed that we've got coming over this cable TV. So this is a picture of Judge Dredd.
Now, Chuck happens to live in an area that's not part of the local TCI service area, so he can't be part of this trial. But the folks that are helping us put this show on assure me that I will be one of the early consumer users of the cable modem, and we'll be plugging in, and we'll find out how well this stuff really does work at home.
And we'll have to keep having parties at your house.
And Chuck will be extremely jealous.
Right. Now let's see. Somewhere on here I was able to, oh here. If you look here, this is an interactive aspect of the web. Click here to give us any comments that you might have about Judge Dredd. So I'm going to click here, and up comes a little form. And I'm going to type into the form. I say, this is a really, well, neat page. Oh, I can't type. Page. Thanks. I can't type. KS, period. Okay. And I could give him my email address, and then I could actually submit this. I say, click here to submit the comments. And
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I got to go fix it. We don't have time to go fix it.
Okay.
But the idea here is that at one moment I'm retrieving information, and another moment I'm sort of sending information to this company. It's a very neat idea. So let's take a look at somewhere else. Oh.
Ah, yes. Well, you visited a cyber cafe. Somebody's put together a compendium, a list of all the cyber cafes they know about out on the net.
Here we go.
I should point out we've been remarkably lucky in our surfing so far. The sites we've been visiting have been pretty responsive, and we're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Knock on Formica.
Now, what's the name of the cafe? Cafe Renaissance. There it is.
Ah, Cafe Renaissance, San Diego, USA. Let's take a click. So we'll give them a little plug here. Cafe Renaissance is located San Diego, California, 6110 Friars Road, Suite 102, about 1 mile west of Fashion Valley Mall, and away we go. Michael Lebien. Y'all know Michael Lebien. Y'all seen him earlier in our show.
Now, are you getting free coffee for this little plug?
No, it's interesting. I paid for every one of my cups of coffee, and I think that's only fair. I mean, I pay for my cups of coffee at every other cafe I go to.
As an honest reporter, you need to not accept favors.
This is kind of interesting, and I'm going to use this myself to figure out where my next Chuck and Rich on the road. So if I'm going to Oregon or Washington or Canada or Massachusetts or Sweden or Cambridge.
Okay. Let's leave the cafes and go back to the real world.
Oh, okay.
If this is the real world.
Okay, here's real world. This is actually my personal favorite on the whole World Wide Web. Tell us about this one, Rich.
Well, Federal Express said, rather than making people install a particular piece of software on their workstation in order to plug in and find out about a package, let's use Mosaic or Netscape over the World Wide Web as a simple standard way that folks can find out the status of a package.
So what I'm going to do here is I've got a form, and I'm actually going to type in an air bill number of something that was received here in East Lansing a little while ago.
You can type in any air bill number as it happens, as long as it's a valid one. Doesn't matter whether you sent or received the package.
Now this actually sent data off to a database system inside Federal Express, probably the same database system they use to look up their own internal information if you call their 800 number. So now we say, here's some Federal Express tracking information. The package has been delivered. It's delivered to the receptionist or the front desk. The delivery time was noon. There's who signed for it.
Hey, excuse me, that's the most useful feature because you usually find out the package was delivered and some unfortunate soul is sitting on it somewhere in receiving.
As a computer geek, this last part is my favorite part. This tells you when this thing was picked up in Denver, when it left Denver, when it got to Memphis, when it got to Lansing, when it put on a van in Lansing, delivered in Lansing.
Chuck, I can tell you're excited.
I think this is neat. This is sort of an example of how the web can be used positively.
Well, now what I wonder is, can the United Parcel Service mine this database somehow and figure out information about how FedEx does its business?
They'd have to know a lot of tracking numbers.
Well, I don't know. Let's look at one more page here.
Okay, the next page is something that you participate in putting together.
Yes, as it happens, President Clinton gave an address at Michigan State to graduating seniors at our convocation last week, and some staff have been working on putting together a home page and a collection of that information. And here we have that page, and if you'll cruise on down a little bit here, we have an online version of his address. Okay, and this is sort of a multimedia transcript. And if you'll go, we had to break it up into segments because we don't want everyone to have to spend forever paging down looking at this. So let's go to one of the segments here. Let's click on Introduction, perhaps.
Now this is an audio file.
Let's
and
click on Introduction here. There you go. Now go on down just a little bit, and you'll see the link to the audio file that you might click on.
So this is an audio file, and this is you see here that it's 873K. Now on a phone line, that would take quite a long time. But for us, it's going to be a minute. I mean, the time of the audio is 1 minute and 48. And that would take quite a while to bring down on a telephone line.
So let's hear what it would sound like.
Let's go ahead and click.
Now, one thing that we did do here is we told you how big that file was. You'll find a lot of places, unfortunately, on the World Wide Web, people will have links to things.
Oops.
Excuse me, President Clinton.
Go ahead. Go ahead and say what you're going to say.
You'll find you click on something and it takes a long time to download. President Clinton, go ahead.
President McPherson, Governor Engler, Ambassador Blanchard, distinguished members of Congress and state officials, members of the Board of Trustees, distinguished faculty on...
Now what you can do is you can follow the written transcript as you listen to the selection that you've picked in audio format. And it's an example of the multimedia applications on the web.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for net surfing. We'll come back to this in every show.
So that's our first episode of Internet TCI. We'd really like to hear back from you. We want to find out that there are really folks out there watching this show. We want to know what your questions are. We want to know what your favorite sites are on the Internet. If you'll send us email, we'll pick the best question and the best site on the net, and we'll give out prizes, starting with the next episode. For those of you who don't have email addresses, we'll also take old-fashioned paper mail or snail mail. And you'll find the address, both email and paper mail, and even a fax number shown on the screen. Take that information down and drop us a line. We really do want to hear from you.
Thanks, Rich. You know, I had a really good time on this show, and I hope the people at home had a good time too. And we'll see you in a month.